are the things that change boys to men. Oh,
cause I need somebody who will stand by me. Still in love. I don't love her. I try to tell myself, you're gonna have to count me out. It's the finest thing I've ever seen. So sunny day. Everybody loves me. Can't be heartbreak. Let me take you for a ride. So if it is love, why do I feel this way?
oh baby, you drive me crazy.
Oh, what can I do, girl?
To slow it down.
I'm still the man for you.
Oh baby, you drive me crazy. On a perfect day.
New Edition. The iconic group of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s is a group we all know and love. With chart-topping hit after hit, their sound instantly sparks nostalgia. Let's keep it real. They inspired the sound of an entire generation of music, and to this day they sell out tours, even a sold-out Vegas residency. But what if I told you that behind the glitz and the glamour, New Edition isn't the brotherhood you think it is? For decades, they were the blueprint for every R&B boy band that came after them. Smooth harmonies, sharp dance moves, and an unbreakable bond. Or so we thought. Because behind the matching outfits and radio hits, this group was falling apart. Fistfights on stage, gunshots at concerts, secret backstabbing, drug addictions that nearly ended lives. The biggest threat to New Edition was never the industry, the competition, or even their own bad contracts. The real enemy? Each other. The drama inside this group runs so deep, it's a miracle they're still standing today. And once you hear what really happened, you'll never look at New Edition the same way again. At first glance, New Edition seemed like a dream come true. 5 childhood friends from the streets of Boston, turning their talent into superstardom. Bobby Brown, Ricky Bell, and Michael Bivins started out singing on the corner for extra cash. Soon, they pulled in Ralph Tresvant and Ronnie DeVoe, completing the group. They weren't just bandmates. They were brothers, and when they won over crowds at talent shows, it felt like fate. But fate had nothing to do with what happened next. A music producer named Maurice Starr saw their potential and signed them to his label. In 1983, they released their debut album, Candy Girl, and suddenly, New Edition was everywhere, charting hits, performing on national TV, and going on their first major tour. That's when they learned their first hard lesson about the industry. After months of touring, playing packed venues, signing autographs, living the dream, they finally got paid. Each member received a check for $1.87. Not a typo. $1.87. The label claimed tour expenses had eaten up the profits. That's when reality hit them. This wasn't a brotherhood. This was business. And in business, somebody always gets played. So they fired Maurice Starr, thinking they were taking back control. They had no idea that their next move would trap them in an even worse situation, one that would put them in debt for years. Firing Maurice Starr felt like freedom. New Edition thought they were finally in control of their careers. But instead of signing directly with MCA Records, the label backing their success, they unknowingly signed with a middleman production company called Jump and Shoot. This was a trap. Jump and Shoot owned their contract, which meant that every dime New Edition made had to go through them first. And just like before, the group saw almost nothing from their success. By the time they realized what was happening, they were already locked in. The only way out? Buying themselves out of their own contract. MCA gave them an offer. They could finally sign directly with the label if they each took out a $100,000 loan. That might sound like a win, but it wasn't. Now, not only did they have zero money, they were in debt. And debt meant one thing. They had to keep recording, keep touring, and keep making money for someone else. They weren't just artists anymore. They were workers, grinding nonstop just to pay back the industry that had already robbed them twice. And the stress of that, it started tearing the group apart from the inside. Bobby Brown, who was never one to play by the rules, was the first one to snap. Bobby Brown was never one to follow the rules. From the very beginning, he was the wild card, the one who pushed boundaries, the one who wanted more than just bubblegum R&B. And as New Edition's success grew, so did Bobby's frustration. He hated the group's clean-cut image, matching suits, synchronized dance moves, sweet love songs. It wasn't him. Bobby wanted to be edgy, raw, grown, and he wasn't quiet about it. During live performances, he started adding provocative dance moves, stuff that had the other members and the label furious. He was skipping rehearsals, showing up late, and at one point he even threw a microphone at Michael Bivins during a show. But Bobby wasn't just acting out. He was daring them to kick him out, and eventually they did. In 1986, the group voted to remove Bobby from New Edition. To the public, it looked like a tragic split, but to Bobby, it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because while New Edition was struggling to pay off their debt, Bobby Brown went solo and became one of the biggest R&B stars of his generation. His album Don't Be Cruel went 7 times platinum, and his single My Prerogative became an anthem. Bobby had finally become the star he always wanted to be. Meanwhile, New Edition was still stuck in the same cycle. Bad deals, bad management, and a growing resentment toward each other. And Bobby? He wasn't done making their lives difficult, because years later, he'd come back into the picture and nearly tear the entire group apart for good. Bobby Brown may have been the first to break free, but he wasn't the only one who spiraled. By the late 80s, New Edition was still on top, but behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Years of bad contracts, constant touring, and industry pressure were taking their toll. And for Ricky Bell, the pressure became too much. At first, no one suspected a thing. Ricky was one of the more quiet, laid-back members of the group. But what people didn't know was that he was secretly battling addiction. It started small: weed, alcohol, the usual. But by the mid-90s, when the group was working on their Home Again album, things had escalated fast. Ricky was deep into cocaine, OxyContin, and alcohol abuse. At one point, his addiction got so bad that he sold his own Timberland boots just to get money for drugs. And then came the overdose. One night, his wife Amy found him unconscious in the bathroom. He had taken too much, and for a moment, it looked like he wouldn't make it. That was his rock bottom. Unlike Bobby Brown, Ricky had kept his struggles hidden for years. It wasn't until 2017, when the New Edition story aired on BET, that fans finally learned the truth. But Ricky wasn't the only one struggling. Bobby's drug use had spiraled out of control too. Years of fame, fortune, and partying had turned into rehab stays, arrests, and tragic losses. And when the group reunited for the Home Again tour in 1997, all of these personal struggles exploded on stage. What should have been a comeback turned into one of the biggest disasters in R&B history. Gunshots, Fistfights, and a tour that ended in complete chaos. By the 2010s, New Edition had survived bad contracts, betrayals, and addictions. But nothing prepared them for what happened next, because this time, the biggest backstab came from inside the group. It all started after their 2017 BET biopic, The New Edition Story, became a massive success. Suddenly, they were back in the spotlight, and the demand for a reunion was huge. But when they tried to move forward as a group, they hit a wall. Turns out, 2 of the members, Ralph Tresvant and Johnny Gill, had secretly trademarked the name New Edition without telling the rest of the group. Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, Bobby Brown, and Ronnie DeVoe found out after the fact. Imagine building something for 40 years, only to wake up one day and realize you don't even own it anymore. The group exploded. Ralph and Johnny claimed they did it to protect the name, but the other members weren't buying it. They felt blindsided, betrayed, and completely shut out of their own legacy. The group split into 2 sides. Johnny and Ralph stuck together and continued performing under the New Edition name. Ricky, Mike, Ronnie, and Bobby formed their own group called RBRM and started touring separately. Fans were confused. How could New Edition, after everything they'd been through, fall apart over a legal battle? For years, they refused to work together. It looked like this was really the end of New Edition. But in 2022, after years of fighting, the unthinkable happened. The group finally sat down, signed new paperwork, and became equal owners of the New Edition trademark. It was a rare moment of peace in a history full of chaos, lawsuits, and backstabbing. But even though they legally reunited, one question still remains. Can they really put the past behind them? Because if history tells us anything, it's that peace in New Edition never lasts for long. For years, fans begged for a real New Edition reunion. All 6 members back together on stage where they belong. And in 2022, it finally happened. The Culture Tour was announced, featuring all 6 original members, a sight fans hadn't seen in decades. The energy was high, and it seemed like the group had finally put their issues behind them, but behind the scenes, it wasn't that simple. Bobby Brown was struggling physically and emotionally. Years of partying, addiction, and personal tragedies had taken their toll. He had already backed out of multiple reunions in the past, including the group's 2014 tour, where he walked off stage mid-performance because he couldn't keep up. This time, he was determined to push through. But during rehearsals, Johnny Gill noticed something. Bobby wasn't himself. His energy was low, his moves were off, and it was clear that his health was still an issue. Fans saw it too. In early performances, Bobby was noticeably out of breath, struggling to keep up with the group's demanding choreography. Rumors began to spread. Was Bobby going to drop out again? The tension grew, but this time, the group made a decision. Instead of pushing Bobby out like they did in the 80s, they adjusted. They reworked their performances, giving Bobby moments to catch his breath while the others carried the choreography-heavy sections. It was the first time the group had truly worked together to lift each other up, rather than letting their differences tear them apart. And for the first time in years, New Edition made it through an entire tour without breaking apart. It was a rare moment of unity, something fans had waited decades for. But with a Las Vegas residency set for 2024, one thing is certain. New Edition's story is far from over. Because if history has shown us anything, drama is never too far behind. After decades of fistfights, lawsuits, and backstage chaos, New Edition is doing something that no one thought would ever happen. They're settling down. In 2024, the legendary R&B group announced their first ever Las Vegas residency at the Wynn's Encore Theater. This isn't just a typical tour stop, this is history. A residency means stability. It means New Edition is finally being recognized as the icons they are, joining the ranks of artists like Usher and Mariah Carey, who turned Vegas into their personal stage. But here's the real question. Can they actually make it through without falling apart? New Edition's track record doesn't exactly scream smooth sailing. Every major reunion has eventually exploded into chaos, from Bobby's onstage fights to the infamous trademark battle. And now, they're locking themselves into an extended stay together, in the same city, performing night after night. For most groups, this would be a dream gig, but for New Edition, it could be a ticking time bomb. So far, things seem to be going smoothly. Fans who attended early shows say the energy is electric. Bobby is showing up, Ralph is in full form, and Johnny's vocals are still sharp. But this is New Edition, and if history has taught us anything, it's that when things start going too well, the drama is just around the corner. Will this Vegas residency finally cement New Edition's legacy as one of the greatest R&B groups of all time? Or will old tensions rise again, bringing the group back to the same cycle of fights, exits, and breakdowns that have defined them for decades? One thing's for sure, with New Edition, nothing is ever guaranteed. New Edition isn't just a music group. They're a survival story. They've been robbed blind, fired their own members, fought each other on stage, and taken each other to court. And yet, somehow, against all odds, they're still here. Most groups would have crumbled under half of what New Edition has been through. But time and time again, they've fought, fallen apart, and come back together. Not because they had to, but because deep down, they couldn't stay away. Maybe it's the money. Maybe it's the nostalgia. Maybe, after all the fights and betrayals, they finally realized what fans knew all along. There's no New Edition without all 6. But here's the thing. New Edition has never been predictable. Sure, the Las Vegas this residency is happening. Sure, they're putting on great performances, but if history has taught us anything, it's that drama is never far behind. So will this be the era where New Edition finally gets it right? Or will the same old tensions come creeping back in, leading to one final blow-up that ends it all? With New Edition, anything is possible. And that's exactly why we keep watching.